Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Federal Reserve jacking up the interest rates another 0.75%. And I'm going, is it that the Fed wants to destroy the economy? Is it that they want to slam on the brakes with both feet and screech the car down the road till it gets off into the ditch? Because that's the only thing I'm thinking of this fast to continue to raise interest rates. And then they're talking about more in the next two meetings, maybe another 1.25% increase. I got to tell you, I think our inflation isn't because of this. And I think the damage that they're going to do, look, I'm not an economist, but it seems a bit aggressive. In fact, the last time the Fed did something like this, 1990 brought us massive recession. In fact, actually, harmed H.W. Bush pretty substantially, which kind of makes me go, and this may sound a bit conspiratorial, and I'm sure that this isn't the sole bit of thinking, but there's part of me that goes, there are those in the wealth class that want recession. In fact, if you watch some of the YouTube, the Instagram, TikTok video commentators, some of the rich people who claim to be rich, they say that we desperately need a recession, to get things back in order. And, the more I see that frame being laid out in front of me, the more I hear the wealth class saying, we need to get things back the way, where they used to be. Kind of makes me go, well, is this really more about getting workers back into line with all the organizing going on with Teamsters marching in Seattle on Amazon? Is this to make people, hurt, make them desperate, make them pliable again? So, force them back to work. Because, I happened to watch Fred Smith, the founder and head poncho over at FedEx. And he was on one of the talking head business shows talking about how, Biden created this inflation with, the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and, the college forgiveness. He's creating all this inflation. And you go, wait a second, but the Inflation Reduction Act, they haven't spent a dime on that yet. How is that caused the inflation of the last year? Well, because it isn't. This is greed driven. This is driven by a supply chain that's been severely broken because it was ill-conceived from the beginning. This is a whole bunch of problems, all coming together, the perfect storm, to where they only feel they have one tool, and that is to smash the economy with massive interest rate hikes, and fast, because it's about getting people getting back to work, and getting them back to work for what? Well, desperation, poverty, wages. Don't have them asking for better wages, hours, conditions. Don't give them the ability to change jobs. So for me, a big part of this has to do with getting things back the way they used to be. Where people were just glad to have a job, just lucky to have a job. You remember that frame? We're going through the Great Resignation right now, where the right to work states are losing their minds with people leaving jobs. And as I talked about recently, the Wallet Hub folks said, the 9 of the top 10 states that have the highest resignation rates, the quit rates, the people who say, take this job and shove it, those are no rights at work states. Mostly in the South, but, across the Southwest. And why? Because people have had enough. And when I see people like Fred Smith out there going, hey, it's Biden's fault. It's all these policies that are going to bring manufacturing back, that are going to invest in our infrastructure, that are going to help us deal with climate change, that are putting us on the path, I believe, towards prosperity. And away from the last 40 years of supply-side voodoo Reaganomics and neoliberal horrible. and this is on both sides of the aisle, the fact that we're talking about reshoring manufacturing, investing in infrastructure, clean technologies, and, oh, by the way, the most important part of it, workers organizing for collective bargaining rights to share in the wealth that their labor creates. Because you go back to when we think about the good old days, the Leave It to Beaver era, the Mayberry era, that was built on strong government investment, high taxation on the wealthy, and strong labor unions to demand a fair share of the wealth that their labor creates. That is the 1950s and 60s. That's what built the most prosperous working class in history. That was the model. And it was global because we set that up around the world. Just like we set up this race to the bottom. We've done this globally. I think it's important that this administration be recognized for trying to move us away from that area. But it's incumbent on us. Elections matter. So when I see this, I got to ask the question: is this about, at least in part, slamming on the brakes, causing the crisis, causing the recession that the wealthy want? Because what the wealthy understand is when recession hits, the working class of this country is cash poor. They can't weather a crisis, so they're desperate and pliable. And oh, by the way, tons of wealth to be made. I was watching one of the videos going, now's the time to get cash rich. Now's the time to hold on to all your cash so that when the recession hits, you can buy up assets cheap. Because that's how rich people stay rich. They never sell their houses. They never sell their property. They never sell. They hold on to because they know over time it's going to appreciate. But when bad times hit, well, that means you lose your home. Your family loses its home. And someone who's cash rich, they get to come in and buy it up cheap. Your loss, their gain. And that's how our economy's been structured for far too long. And I'm saying, we're at a moment where we can change that. But we're one, maybe two elections away from, being right back in the heart of that horrible. So to me, that's why it's part of the reason we're doing the Working Class Heroes Tour. We're going to be kicking that off on September 30th. It's part of the reason we need to have these conversations and hammer this stuff out. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got any other ideas on why the Fed is slamming on the brakes? Look, I understand it's the tool that they have to try and bring things a little bit, but wow, this aggressively, I got to tell you, I think the medicine will probably kill the patient in this view. Anyway, today I had the honor and the privilege on one of our affiliate stations, WCPT AM 820, to be part of a diversity, equity, and inclusion panel. The old straight white guy on the diversity and equity and inclusion panel. Yeah, I fit in like a giant red thumb. And look, and as I said, the reality is the reason I think these things are important is from a labor guy's perspective. We get sliced and diced and pitted against each other on every front. Male, female, white, black, gay, straight, this religion, that religion, however they can figure out to pit us against each other. So we don't ask for better wages, hours, conditions. Because for me, everything comes back to the kitchen table. Everything comes back to, can you support your family? Can you keep a roof over your family's head? Can you prepare for your children to grow up and go to college? And can you lead a decent life? And can the work that you do, fund that? I believe we can have a system that does that. But as long as we're pitted against each other, not going to happen. And you go back to our labor history, and one of the things I talked about is, in the South, at the end of slavery, what they did is they passed laws to lock black people up for no reason. Oh, well, you were standing around. Go to jail. And they would give them lengthy jail sentences. And then the states had these lease convict agreements where they would lease out these people that they arrested for chumped up nonsense, and they would use them to break strikes. So the white workers who were in the mines going, hey, we want better wages, hours, conditions, their strikes were being broken up by people who didn't have a choice. But it was that visual, that division that caused them to hate each other. And look, they were both going to the bottom. And the people cashing in, well, the folks in the ivory tower. So for me, again, it's never the issue. I never look at the issue from the right-left frame, from the black-white frame. And as I said, look, I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, a minority in a minority community. We used to play a neat game. And I said this, we played a neat game. It was called Chase the White Kid and Beat Him Up. I'm sure it was a fun game had I not been the white kid. And I always joke, because I joke that I'm half black. The other half at the time was blue. Because I got beat up a lot. Get it? Black and blue? Yeah. But I did realize at a very young age, and this is where the point is, that black and white didn't matter as much as green. The color that mattered most was green, and neither of us had it. We were both broke. And while we were supposed to be pitted against each other, when you don't have food at the end of the month, when you're worried about keeping the roof over your head, that division on race doesn't seem to matter as much. But you start moving up the economic ladder where we're creating the Hunger Games, where we're going, hey, if they win, you have to lose. This is where the division happens. And this is where we need to start coming together. And this was my point while being the straight white guy on the panel. This is why it's important. We have to put these differences aside if we're going to move forward as workers, as a country, as a citizen. We don't always have to agree individually, but as a matter of the country moving forward, we have to come together. And the workplace for me is that place where we do it. And I told the story. Look, 30 years ago, we had someone who was transgender back then. And do you know who cared? Nobody. This person went, and we'll say his name was Ron at the time. Ron went away, was gone a couple of months. Ron came back, was Ronna. Nobody cared because, well, got to keep their job. Did the same job, made the same wages, lived their life. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Nobody cared. Now, did people talk behind your back? Yeah. But they talked behind his back too, because that's what we do. Individually, you're not going to change hearts and minds in the moment. But institutionally, that's where we have to move forward. So it's one of those things. Now, again, you're always going to have people pitted against each other, like this story coming out of Michigan. There's a guy running for Congress who's caught everyone's attention in this day. His name is John Gibbs. Black guy, went to Stanford. But while he was at Stanford, he founded, I guess, a think tank, if you want to call it that. The Society for the Critique of Feminism, I guess, is what it was, and it argued that women folk, you don't have the characteristics necessary to govern. Sorry. You just don't have it in you. Sorry, men are smarter than women. This is the black gentleman making his assertion again, dividing us, not just on black white, but male female. Because he didn't make the argument that black women couldn't govern. He said all women. And he's kind of taking a shot for it now because, well, he's running for Congress. Now, will this matter to the MAGA crowd? Doubt it. But it is interesting to see how individually we're able to pick and choose, where institutionally, I think we all understand. Women and men, they've got different skills, different talents, but neither is better or worse at governing. We could argue we're all bad at it, especially when our Republican friends who write nonsense like this at made-up think tanks think that they know how to govern best, which is to destroy. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back on the other side. Going to talk a little bit about the little announcement that came out of New York today. Something came out of New York. Maybe we'll figure that out. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm guessing someone's going to take someone's going to have some problem with Mr. Gibbs' comment that women are not as smart as men and can't govern. Let's go to the phones and let's. I'm sure Alice is going to have a thought on this. Alice, what do you make of this? Are women just dumb? Is that the point?
Obviously, the man is deluded, and he knows nothing of history.
So we have a problem with that.
Not a thing. Oh, I have a problem with it. A big problem. Apparently, he knows nothing of history. Of course, you know, we've been indulging in this revisionist history, you know, for a couple of centuries. But when you look back and take away the revisionism, there was actually a period of for about 2,000 years in the Middle East, where Turkey and whatnot, where it was ruled by women for over 2,000 years, and there was absolutely no war. And then, of course, you know, some of the steppe tribes came in that were patriarchs and took over. But obviously, he knows nothing.
Alice, shh. Not allowed to say that, 'cause they weren't Americans.
I don't care. I can trace my heritage back. Can he? See, now I'm going to pull out that elite card, because I'll do that every once in a while.
All right. We got the word from the elitist. I got you, Alice. You're pulling the elite card. I got it.
Well, you know, I have the ancestry. I don't have the money, but I do have the ancestry and the education, so there you are.
Good stuff. Appreciate it, Alice. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
I would hope, and this is one of those moments where you hope that women would take offense to that and then go vote. See, because voting is the way to, you know, in this country, we express ourselves. Now, remember the stories of Al Capone? You know, murder, mafia, you know, crime, all that stuff. It was the IRS that took down Al Capone. No, none of the other criming that went on. Interesting to kind of bring that up in this moment. And also interesting to remember that Rick Scott, if you remember Rick Scott's 11-point plan, he wants to cut the IRS by half. You know, the richest guy in the Senate wanting to cut the IRS. It kind of makes you wonder. So also, remember when Hillary and Donald Trump were in the debates, and she pointed out that he had paid no federal income tax for a bunch of years, and Trump didn't bother to deny it. In fact, said that makes him smart. Remember that? Well, today the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, has charged that Trump, his adult children, the Trump organization, all of them were involved in what they are saying expansive fraud that lasted over a decade, that Trump himself doth launch. And, you know, some of the stories coming out of it, you go, well, you know, they're just piling on. You go, one of the stories that caught my attention is they were saying some of his properties he had overvalued. And I know people say, well, you know, we all overvalue our property a little bit. Yeah, you know, so that we can get the loan to, refinance our house. And look, they all do a little bit. But some of his properties, 3,300%. So I was thinking about this today, and I'm going, okay, because understand, this is what rich people get away with all the time. So the good thing is, while I don't think anything's going to come out of this for Trump, maybe a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, who knows. But I think this is an opportunity to look at what rich people all across the board get away with, and we don't hold accountable. Think about this. If you had, let's say, a $1,000 house, and that you overinflated that $1,000 house 3,300%, you would have a boatload of money, right? Right? You'd have $3.3 million, just around that area, right? So what if you, I don't know. What if you said, I'm going to take out a loan against that $3 million home, and I'm going to take, $2.5 million out in equity. Now remember, the house is worth $1,000. You're going to take out this massive loan. And then you could file bankruptcy. They can have the house. You got all this money. Who pays for that? Oh, it's the banks. No, it's you. It's me. The banks don't lose money. They just pass the costs on to everyone else. Also understand, Trump was giving away land and buildings and stuff in charitable fashions so that they could write it off. Because again, it's about minimizing the tax liability. In those years that they pay nothing, some of this stuff happens. And it makes him look good. It makes him look philanthropic. He's giving away land. And rich people do this stuff, giving away assets that they massively overvalue, and then they get to write it off. So you wonder how rich people don't pay taxes. You wonder how they get away with all this stuff. They play these kind of games that nobody never holds them accountable. Now remember, I brought up Rick Scott and his 11-point plan. This idea that he can then gut the IRS by half so that nobody ever bothers to look into that. Nobody ever bothers to hold these people accountable for the things that they're getting away with. I mean, it's really insane when you stop and think about it. But we allow it to happen, and we don't bother. We don't bother because, well, we're too busy looking at each other. That's the part that gets me. It just is what it is. Let's go to the phone lines. Got MJ on the line. MJ, how are we doing today?
Rick, thank you so much for taking my call, and I love the topic that you guys are talking about, education. And I believe that so much is being impacted at education is that we don't have proper funding for it, and we really need to put more funding into education. I don't know, in Colorado where I used to live, they had a lot of the education funded from the cannabis industry, and so a lot of these states don't have that, and it's not federally, regulated or legal yet. So that's one thought. But I think with what's happening with all these schools in the South, and particularly the red states, is it's being really impacted by theology and theocracy. And so they're nominating all these very, very, very far-right individuals to be on the school boards. And so that's where they're starting to really take the whole thing of banning books put in place. And I know it's something for educators like your guest, Irene, is having difficulty dealing with that, I'm sure, at the college level because of the whole loan forgiveness thing has been kind of thrown like a match into a firebox. So I understand that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always been my view that you don't fund education through gimmicks and through vices. It should be something that we fund as a matter of course, not because of gambling winnings like we do in Ohio or pot like they do, like you said, in Colorado. We should be doing it as a matter of course. I'm with you, MJ. I appreciate the thoughts. Thanks.
Hey, thank you.
Good stuff. Seriously, I mean, at the end of the day, we really need to prioritize. And, oh, by the way, start taxing the wealthy again, especially people like Trump. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day nearly 500,000 textile workers from Maine to Alabama walked off the job in a general strike. The United Textile Workers had launched an organizing campaign the year before. Within months, their membership had grown from 15,000 to well over 250,000. Working conditions and pay were abysmal. Normal work weeks averaged 55 hours. Child labor was widespread, and workers were always in fear of mill closings, pay cuts, and firings for suspected union activity. In the South, the industry had essentially been in a depression since the early 20s. The key issue was the stretch out. workers were routinely expected to complete an increasing amount of work at the same rate and wage. For a brief moment, workers hoped their conditions would change when President Roosevelt signed the Code of Fair Competition the previous summer. It raised wages, limited hours, and prohibited child labor. It also allowed for union organizing. But the mill owners maneuvered around the code effectively, and the Textile Relations Board refused most workers' complaints. Fed up, workers walked out of the mill by the hundreds of thousands. They used the flying squadron tactic employed by Minneapolis Teamsters earlier that year, traveling from town to town, from mill to mill, calling workers out on strike. Mill owners were shocked. Within days, strikers confronted thousands of police and scabs. More than 40,000 National Guardsmen were called out in 16 states. Over the course of the strike, 16 people would be killed and hundreds more injured. After 22 days, union leaders called off the strike when President Roosevelt promised a government survey of industry conditions. It was an outrage, a betrayal, and a defeat felt for decades. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
For many people, the animals they adopt and love become more like family members than pets. We have deep relationships with cats, dogs, parrots, goats, horses, and other fellow critters who at least pretend to love us back, providing comfort and joy all around. Sadly, though, life for all of us animals is a spin around the wheel of fortune, so illness and injuries happen. That's why one of the most valued members of every community are the staffers in our local veterinarian offices. Practically all vets, nurses, technicians, and support staff are there chiefly because they love animals and get personal satisfaction from providing care for them. When I say they are there, I not only mean 9 to 5, but this group of independent health providers are committed to being there when needed, including off hours and days off, for animal misfortune and suffering don't go by clocks and calendars. Local practitioners also try to be there for low-income people, offering deferred payment plans and even discounted fees so their animals can get the treatment they need. But wait, sound the ambulance sirens. Something is going horribly wrong. This venerable profession has recently been collapsing into a corporate model of Wall Street-owned chains. They're monopolizing markets, reducing staff, gutting service, and prioritizing the love of money over the love of animals. It's not uncommon these days for frantically worried customers to bring an ill or injured pet into their old reliable vet office, only to find it has quietly come under chain ownership, is understaffed, and is unwilling to accept the patient, forcing a desperate scramble to find emergency care, often out of town. This is Jim Hightower saying the same profiteering corporate mentality that has proven disastrous for human health care is now rapidly locking down pet care, and that's an act of animal cruelty.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Bob sent me an email during the break that he says the whole case against Trump is fraudulent itself. That's the real fraud, Bob says. That this is a political witch hunt, again, his words. And I think he's been watching Trump a little bit. And I guess, to Trump's credit, he's not going to sit back and defend himself. He's going to go out on the Hannity show and attack. And I say, good on you, Don. Keep it up. Keep shooting the mouth off. As my grandfather always said, you have the right to remain silent. Maybe you should use it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on these fraud charges brought by Letitia James, the Attorney General there in New York. I've asked Chris Hahn to come talk with us. He's a syndicated radio host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime.
So it's a witch hunt. It's a fraud on the fraud case. What do you think of Bob's assertions?
Yeah, Bob, they keep finding all these witches. So if it is a witch hunt, it's going well for the hunters of the witches, particularly if by witch you mean fraud and crimes and abuse of power, because that's what it is. And, here's the thing that struck me today in the last hour or two, where I really was kind of focusing on this, getting ready for your show. Twice today, both by Letitia James and by the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, it was said that presidents of the United States, former presidents of the United States, are no different than anyone else. And frankly, in the eyes of the law. And frankly, that is the way we always thought things would be in this country. No man or woman is above the law. No man should get special treatment because of their office, their wealth, their birth. And Donald Trump has consistently tried to assert that he should be treated differently. And Judge Cannon down in Florida asserted that he should be treated differently. Thank God some judicial sanity has set in Florida today with the 11th Circuit's opinion on the document case. And of course, Letitia James said the same thing earlier today, that the president of the United States should not be treated different, former president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, and I said this a moment ago, they got Al Capone, the IRS got Al Capone for all his crimes. Could this be what they finally get him on? But doesn't this, and Billy Barr was out there saying that, well, the case isn't all that strong. He doesn't think it's gonna lead to anything. But they're dragging in the children, Christopher, Don and Eric and Ivanka are like 6-year-olds, but they're dragging in the children. How low do you have to be to drag in the children? Children who are executives in the company.
Yeah, I mean, Don Corleone, Sonny Corleone got shot on the causeway. It is the children are part of the family business there, unfortunately. And yeah, I genuinely don't like it when the children of politicians get dragged into the political fight. But when one of them worked in the White House, the other one was the president of his company or a director of his company. I'm sorry, you're dragged in. You're part of the scheme. You are a knowing participant. And it's not like they're 10 years old. They are grown-ass men and women. And they are perfectly capable of saying, no, daddy, and moving on from it. But they did not. So, yes. And look, I don't know what he meant by she doesn't have a case. This is not a criminal case. He will not go to jail for this. This is a civil case. You do not need to be proven guilty by a reasonable doubt in a civil case. The rule in a civil case is preponderance of evidence, meaning more likely than not that a crime was committed, or a tort in this case, or a civil rule being broken. I don't know. I didn't read the entire brief. It's 200 pages long. I don't think Bill Barr read it either. It's 200 pages long. Seems to me that she wouldn't be bringing this case if she didn't think she had a preponderance of evidence. It would be, I think, political, misconduct, malpractice by her to do that.
Right. Now, again, you look at this and, there are those who are saying, well, why isn't this a criminal indictment? If this is fraudulent, if he committed fraud, why doesn't she bring criminal charges? Now, it's my understanding she's the attorney general. That's not their job. That's the district attorney's job, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, in certain cases, there are criminal crimes that can be brought by the attorney general. But it's clear to me, look, they have a pretty good track record in the New York State Attorney General's office of getting convictions against Donald Trump in civil cases. He cannot operate his charity anymore in New York. Had to pay $2 million to real charities in New York because of how he misused his foundation to fund his own stuff. So, civil cases, I think people have to understand this about Donald Trump. It's going to be very hard to ever send him to jail. You know, I've been talking about this for a couple of years now, I think. I don't think he's ever going to jail.
I agree. Never going to happen.
Right. But, one of the things he loves is being rich and having his names on buildings. And in New York particularly, there are many buildings with his name on it, some of which, the co-op boards are kicking the name off of, but many of which he owns outright or his company owns. For him to have to sell off his New York assets, as much as he wants to downplay his ties to New York these days, Donald Trump is a born and raised New Yorker who always wanted to make it in New York, and removing his names from buildings in New York and not allowing him to do business in New York anymore is going to be like putting him in jail in a lot of ways. And it will be a sad day for him.
Yeah, I mean the legacy, not quite what he was hoping for, but you know,
no. I almost feel bad about it. If I didn't think he was such a horrible person trying to destroy this country, I'd almost feel bad for him. But I don't.
Yeah, no.
You're looking at me like, what do you mean, Phil? Not really.
No, because you know I've had a couple of conversations with people today and go, well, what's the big deal? One of the main crimes that they claim he committed is overinflating the value of his properties.
Yes.
And it sounds innocuous enough. Oh, okay, you know, everyone wants to get a little bit more out of their properties. But when you start looking at it, one of the numbers, 3,300% he inflated properties, you go, that's a little bit more than just a little bit.
Yeah, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. He said that Mar-a-Lago was worth $750 million. It's worth $75 million. He said his apartment in New York City was 30,000 square feet. It's 10,000 square feet. 10,000 square feet is still a huge apartment. It'd be a huge house. It's still a very valuable asset, but it's not the asset he said. And the crime is that he went to banks and said, give me a loan based on this. And yes, people, I look, is it a common thing that people do when they're talking about their real estate? Because you don't really know what your real estate is worth at any given time. The market fluctuates. So you have some wiggle room in estimating what your real estate, you don't have 350% wiggle room
or 3,300%.
You know how big it is. You know the difference between 10,000 and 30,000 square feet. That's an outright lie. And that is something that he used to try to make more money and to make himself richer and to defraud banks.
Yeah. So what do you say to the people who go, well, who cares? It's just the banks. Who cares if the banks get defrauded? What's that got to do with me?
What it has to do with you is this man wants to be president of the United States again. And I think it's kind of important for people to understand what a fraud he is. And I get it. You had your guy, write you today on Twitter or Facebook, telling you why he's not a fraud. And there's some people who are going to just believe him no matter what. But elections in this country are won on the margins. You don't have to convince everyone that he's a fraud who's voted for him. If 1 or 2 or 3% of Trump voters say, I'm done with this guy, he's done. It's over. Can't win. I mean, how many votes did he win? How many votes did he win Pennsylvania by in 2016? It was like less than 100,000 votes. Biden won Pennsylvania by less than 100,000 votes. 50,000 votes is all you really need there, right? So it's telling people the truth, showing the fraud that he is to more Americans and keeping them reminded of that. I think it's important. And more importantly than all of that politics that I just went through, no person is above the law.
Yeah. No, but
and he should be treated no differently.
But I go back to the 2016 debates when Hillary, pointed at him that he doesn't pay taxes, and he said that makes him smart. This is how he doesn't pay taxes. So for me, this is what rich people get away with all the time. So the fact that we're seeing this, you said that nobody's above the law. Yes, they are constantly. And I look at Rick Scott, one of the richest guys in the Senate, wanting to gut the IRS in half. Yeah. And I'm going, this all plays into this. So that kind of anger that you see in the working class because people are struggling.
Well, he wants to gut the IRS in half, but he wants to make sure that you and I pay more taxes.
Exactly. So, this is one of those moments where you go, there is a difference. The wealthy in this country continue to get away with things. And while the courts may say everyone's the same, we both know they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I got it. But, a lot of rich people go to jail every day. A lot of rich people get brought before courts and they can't say, well, I'm the president. You can't accuse me of a crime. I mean, his argument in Florida, I know we're going back and forth between two cases here, but I'm much more interested in the Mar-a-Lago raid, if you will. His argument in Florida, which Judge Cannon accepted, was, if you do a criminal investigation of me, it will do irreparable harm. I'm sorry, criminal investigations do irreparable harm to everyone who gets investigated criminally. That's the point.
I got to tell you, though, while I'm not a Donald Trump fan by any stretch of the imagination, you kind of have to be in awe of the audacity, the giant stones on this guy to pull the stuff that he's pulled over the years and continues to do.
It's amazing. You're right. I am in awe of the cojones on this man. But I am more in awe of the fact that, man, that was real Long Island to me. I mean, it's getting late for me. I'm like not a guy who's like talking this late, unless I do a couple of Red Bulls. And you're like in that zone where I could still go to sleep. I could still be up. Like if I'm doing a midnight hit on TV, I'm Red Bulling it. I'm wide awake and I can't go back to sleep till like 3 o'clock in the morning. But I got a 9:30 hit with you and I'm like, I could probably make it and then go to sleep afterwards. Let me do it. But the Long Island comes out when I'm tired. But I even lost my train of thought now. But it's amazing to me how this man gets away with it. But it's more amazing to me how people support him still and send him money to fight the lawsuits and the criminal investigations against him. It is amazing to me that still happens.
Yep.
That there's a working man right now, a guy driving a truck like you do, like my dad did for 40 years as a Teamster. They're out there working and they're sending their hard-earned money to this guy who's supposed to be a freaking billionaire. And they're sending him their hard-earned money. And they will continue to do that in the face of overwhelming information of his history of criminal and fraudulent activity. And they will continue to do that. Plus, if he's really as rich as says he is, why does he need your $5 a month? That to me, I got to tell you, that to me is the worst part about this guy. It's the worst thing.
No, look, he's going to tell you. He's smart. He's got other people paying his bills. OPM, man, other people's money. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Chris Hahn, syndicated radio host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. You want to check out his stuff, ChristopherHahn.com. We'll get links out on social media. Now, you're talking about Mar-a-Lago and the raid. And look, we've found out recently how much, classified documents he's had, how he's misused it since he left the White House. I want to know, how much did he do while he was in the White House? If this is what he did when he left, what did he do while he was there?
Well, unfortunately, when he's there, he can do whatever he wants, right? He's the president of the United States, and he is the ultimate declassifier, right? He's the ultimate authority on what is and isn't classified. Now, I am a big believer that we classify far too much in this country, and we probably should, the public and the people should have more access to more things so we know what's going on. But that said, I doubt he ever declassified anything formally. And that's a big red herring, a big bluff, a big lie.
I thought he waved his hands. Isn't that what Cash Patel said? Some kind of
order. I had a
magic
order that I only told myself. It's just, it's first of all, a document itself is not classified. It's the information on that document. And you must assume that information exists in other parts of the government other than the document that has been handed to the president of the United States for him to review. So if you're going to declassify it, you need to declassify that information wherever it is in the government so everyone has the opportunity to read it and understand what it is. And unless he did that, he didn't declassify anything. So the argument is stupid. It's ridiculous. How Judge Cannon even gave any credence to it at all is beyond me. But the 11th Circuit cleaned it up today. Thank God.
Yep, thank goodness. And we'll see what this did. So does anything come out of this? I mean, ultimately, I've got friends who are saying, no, it's not a big deal. Hillary's emails, Chris. Hillary's emails.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary's emails kept her from being president. And as I have said, I don't think the man's ever going to jail. I think that there'll be some sort of punishment here for this. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's not going to be jail. But again, I'm not looking for, 50% of Trump voters to stop voting for him. I'm looking for 1 or 2% to say, I've had it with this man. And I got to tell you, I talk to a lot of them. I mean, I go on a lot of conservative media. I get a lot of messages from them. I have seen a change in some of them, not all of them. And again, it doesn't have to be much. And I think that if you look at what's going on with the midterm elections right now, you look what happened in New York 19, you look what's happened in Alaska. People are tired of these scam artists. I mean, Sarah Palin lost to a Democrat for an open congressional seat in Alaska, not because the Democrat ran this great, tremendous campaign. DCCC, I don't think even spent any money there. She lost because the people of Alaska didn't want another Donald Trump, didn't want another person who's going to be there just for themselves. And it wasn't everybody. Sarah Palin still got 48% of the vote, but that wasn't enough. 48% does not make you a congressperson in America. So, I think that there's a critical mass forming that is going to defeat Trumpism, not in 4 years or in 3 years, but this year. I think there's going to be some significant surprises in the elections in November. Maybe a governor or two that we're not even thinking is in trouble right now.
Interesting. So you think that Trumpism as a whole could go down? I'm thinking just Trump and the DeSantises of the world, the Mastrianos of the world, take that on and go forward. But I hope you're right. I
don't think the Mastrianos have any chances in hell of getting elected.
I sure hope you're right. From your lips.
Mastriano, look, I wouldn't say the same thing about Dr. Oz. Because Dr. Oz kind of is like a casual Trumpist, right? Mastriano is a full-blown, probably was in the Capitol. We just don't have any video of it. Kind of Trumpist.
Yeah, no,
right.
I put him as a Nazi, so there's.
Yeah, that. I mean, exactly. That guy's not getting elected. People understand who he is, what he's about, and in the same vein that as Sarah Palin loses her election in Alaska, I'm sorry, Alaska is a lot more conservative than Pennsylvania is, and I just don't see a way for Mastriano to win Pennsylvania now. My worry about Dr. Oz, and I do believe we should win Pennsylvania. I believe Fetterman should win it. I worry about Fetterman. I saw his interview last week. I keep saying this to you. I wish he would put on a collared shirt so that the 1% of people who say, what is up with that hoodie, who decide not to vote for him in a state like Pennsylvania, which 1% could really make a difference. It's driving me freaking crazy, Rick. I like him. I like what he stands for. Put on a tie. Just a couple of times. Not all the time. Once in a while. So that people know you're serious about the job you're running for. People like some 75-year-old retired truck driver who wants his senator to put on a tie.
I'll send you a picture.
You've got a picture of him in a tie?
Sure. By the
way, he's lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And I bet you he'd look pretty good in a suit right now. He should probably buy one.
Yeah, I've seen him in a suit and tie before. There are pictures out there. I will send you one during the break.
Rick, have you seen it this year?
No.
I haven't.
No.
Right? I get it. That's his shtick. I don't like shtick in politics.
Gotcha.
I like winning. And this is, nothing, the shtick's going to suck if he doesn't have a job next year, right? And we have Dr. Oz for 6 years, a guy from New Jersey, run, as a senator in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's, you want to hold on to the shtick for that?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Dr. Oz to be the 51st vote for Mitch McConnell. I mean, that's sickening to me.
I hear you.
Ditch it. I know he listens to your show too.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking directly to you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, who I like. I find compelling. I want you to win. I'm a political strategist. Pennsylvania is a 50-50 state.
There you go.
Anything could turn people off or anything could turn them on.
There you go, John. Chris wants you to wear a tie. Good stuff. Chris, I appreciate the time, man. As always, good stuff. I'll look forward to having you back again real soon.
Anytime.
Good stuff. Our good friend Christopher Hahn. Make sure you check out his website, ChristopherHahn.com, and the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that members of the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 went out on strike against the Frontier Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. What they did not know was that the strike would last for more than 6 years, becoming one of the longest work actions in U.S. labor history. The Frontier was the second casino to open on the Vegas Strip in 1942. At the time of the strike, the Alardi family owned the historic casino. The Alardis were vehemently anti-union. They renovated the old facility and then reopened, refusing to sign a contract to pay its workers the same rate provided at most other Vegas casinos. Claiming that the Frontier was too small to match the wages of the larger outfits, management refused to budge from their position. In response, Local 226 members mobilized. The year before, Hattie Canty had been elected president of the local. local. She was a black mother of 10 children and a widow. She had worked as a hotel maid. Her leadership brought a new determination to the Culinary Workers Union. Local 226 set up 24-hour picket lines outside the frontier. The strike was joined by Bartenders Local 165, Teamsters Local 995, the Operating Engineers Local 501, and the Carpenters Local 1780. The strike became an important moment in Vegas labor history, as other casino owners looked on watching the labor battle unfold. The unions stood strong. The picketers' demand that the owners should, quote, sell, shut down, or sign became the call. In the end, the Alardis decided to sell. The new ownership signed a union contract and rehired 280 striking workers. Triumphant union members cut a red ribbon at the hotel to mark their victory.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So Leanne sent me an email today. Got me questioning Rick Scott again. She said she finally read Rick Scott's 12-point plan, and it says they want to save Social Security and Medicare. She asks, did they change it from when it said they wanted to get rid of these programs? I thought I remember you saying they were going to get rid of them. And his plan said that. Can you help me? Because she's going to do some door knocking, doing some getting out there to get people to vote, making phone calls. Good for her and good on you, Leanne, and everyone else. Now, it made me go back and look at the 11-point plan that I remember Rick Scott coming out with. It's now morphed into a 12-point plan. But it's still there, Leanne, in the 6th point. If you go and look at point 6 of 11 or 12, whatever the plan you're looking at, titled Government Reform and Debt. What they want to do is they want to have all federal legislation sunset in 5 years. He says, if a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. Now, this is where everyone's saying Social Security is in danger. Medicare is in danger. Go down the list of programs that help working people. All of that is in danger because in 5 years when it sunsets, do you really think this Republican Party or really any of the Republican parties of the last 50 years would vote for this stuff? The answer is no. They were against Social Security from the beginning. They were against Medicare from the beginning. These are folks who hate working people because these programs benefit the poor and working class. These aren't tax cuts for rich people. No. These are to help poor folks. So this is where that's at, and it's in both the 11 and the 12-point plan. His argument was we just do away with it all. Now, also in that plan, there are a bunch of other things that they want to take away from people, like the power of their vote. They're big on term limits. Oh, we're going to have term limits because they know that as long as they can keep churning people in and out, they can control the flow. I'm a believer of I have the ultimate term limiter. It's called the right to vote, and we need to use it more often so that people like Rick Scott don't spend that much time in Congress. There are some ideas in his grand plan that I'm not opposed to. But this sunsetting of all federal programs every 5 years, and then they'll hope that maybe they'll let Social Security live. I'm struggling with it. Now, this idea that they're saving it, I love this mentality that in order to save it, we have to break it. We have to kill it. We have to starve it. We have to strangle the program down to it pays nothing. That's how we save it. And you go, well, if that's how you're saving it, how does it help anyone? Well, that's the point. It's not supposed to. And imagine Granny now going, what? It's gone? How cruel is that people have spent their entire lives planning Social Security to be one of the 3 legs of the stool that they retire on? But then again, cruelty is the point, Leanne. Hope that helps. Thanks so much for the email. You want to email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Also, if you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a minute. Simple, easy to do, and share with your friends.
We're reaping what we've sown. We're now experiencing devastating climate impacts.
3 simultaneous major storms underscore climate crisis impacts. Climate change juiced Pakistan's catastrophic flooding, study finds. Plus,
this is my ancestors' land, and I feel like I shouldn't have to leave.
Court blocks massive proposed plastics plant in Louisiana.
All those blockages and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen to you as a climate scientist is that your predictions come true.
Yeah, that's also the worst thing that can happen to you as a political news person on the radio. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know the Queen of England died a couple of weeks ago, so that's kept the news media busy. But as it turns out, there were 3 huge storms over one single weekend.
And a lot more than that over this past summer. As we go to air, it's Climate Week in New York City, the annual Climate Solutions Conference coinciding with the United Nations General Assembly. Both events arrive after a summer of extreme weather disasters around the world. Pakistan is still reeling from one of the worst climate disasters in history. The World Health Organization warns of a second disaster. Waterborne and mosquito-borne diseases are surging after unprecedented rains inundated a third of the nation, killing more than 1,500 people, and there is not enough medicine to treat millions of displaced people living in crowded camps. This week, climate experts at the World Weather Attribution Initiative reported that climate change supercharged the intensity of Pakistan's record rainfall by as much as 50%. And the month-long extreme heat wave that preceded the rain was made 30 times more likely. This past weekend, 3 powerful storms hit simultaneously around the world, underscoring the rising costs of inaction on climate change. Hurricane Fiona ripped across Puerto Rico as a Category 1 storm, causing a territory-wide blackout on its fragile electric grid. Some areas received as much as 30 inches of rain, triggering astonishing flooding. As we go to air, 1 death has been confirmed, thousands rescued from the floods. President Biden has issued a state of emergency to free up federal disaster funds.
I hope he's ready to throw them some paper towels.
And FEMA says it learned from monster Hurricane Maria, which devastated the island 5 years ago this week. This time, FEMA pre-staged emergency personnel and supplies. Also on Sunday, Typhoon Nanmadol slammed Japan, unleashing torrential flooding in mountain areas. More than 9 million people were told to evacuate. The storm is expected to cause billions in damages. In Alaska, the zombie remnants of Typhoon Merbok hit western Alaska as the most intense storm in 50 years, causing dangerous storm surge flooding over more than 1,000 miles of Alaska's low-lying coastline, destroying bridges, roads, and coastal defenses.
All within 2 or 3 days.
Yes. And on Democracy Now!, climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann summed up the onslaught of extreme weather this summer, from historic heat waves in China, Europe, and the U.S. to Pakistan's biblical floods and this weekend's crushing storms.
We are witnessing the devastating consequences of climate change now. This isn't 10 years into the future. It's not way off in the Arctic. It's where we live now. We are experiencing devastating consequences of past climate inaction, and it really drives home the importance of taking action now.
Yeah, and wait until it gets really bad.
But some good news.
Good.
In Australia, the Parliament has passed its first major climate legislation in more than 10 years, with a first-ever mandate to cut Australia's carbon emissions 43% by 2030, which would bring one of the world's top coal exporters in line with Western allies like the U.S. and the U.K.
Nice.
Also, South Australia, where they famously installed one of the world's first utility-scale battery farms on a bet from Tesla CEO Elon Musk.
Right.
South Australia is now set to become the first major regional grid to run on 100% renewables.
Very cool. I remember when they used to get blackouts all the time until Elon Musk and his batteries came along.
Yep. And finally,
This is my home. This is my ancestors' land. And I feel like I shouldn't have to leave my home to let an industry come in here and destroy what was built up for us from generations.
a state district court in Louisiana has revoked air permits for a massive proposed $9 billion petrochemical plastics complex in the majority black district of St. James Parish, a region known as Cancer Alley because of high cancer rates among residents living near a large number of polluting industries. Formosa Plastics Corporation says it will appeal, but the ruling is a major victory for local environmental justice groups.
Nice. Good news indeed. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we didn't have time for, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting quote of the day from Florida Representative Matt Gaetz. He says, I get why it's hard to keep cocaine from coming into the country. People in the United States like using cocaine. I'm like, really? Do they? Or is it just you? Just kind of throwing it out there, you and never mind. Never mind. But again, priorities, my friends. Priorities, my friends. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So, again, the question, the fraud investigation, the charges moving forward made by the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. Is it all a witch hunt? Is it poor Donald being persecuted politically? Or is he just a criminal? Did he do the crimes? Well, we may find out during a trial. And here to share some thoughts, I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the chief cook and bottle washer over at No Dem Left Behind. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime, Rick. I always enjoy being on your show, man.
So, witch hunt?
You know what's messed up is, if Donald Trump would have never threw his hat in the ring to run for president, the truth is he would probably still be getting away with this stuff. Nobody would probably be saying anything about this. For all we know, every single rich person out there has been doing the same thing.
Yep.
But right now, Donald Trump is cooked. We're talking falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, bank fraud. I mean, this guy's going to go down. Now, of course, I hope people don't get their hopes up and think this is going to send him to prison, because it's not. This is not going to be something that's going to put him behind bars. But what this is going to do is they're going to come after that $250 million for sure. And when this is over with, Trump's family, to include his kids, are going to have to basically leave New York and never look back again, because they're going to never be allowed to be a part of any business deal whatsoever. And that's where we're at. And of course, between what's going on in Georgia, and between Merrick Garland, they're saying that this is like the 1-2 punch and the knockout. So, I'm excited. Donald Trump is a career criminal, and he's now finally getting caught up in it.
I what you just said, I said years ago. While he was running for president, I'm like, I don't know why this guy is bringing himself out into the public space. Eventually, someone's going to look into all the shady dealings that we had heard about for years while he was running around in New York, all the bankruptcies, all the cheating people out of things. All this stuff eventually was going to get investigated. And for all those people go, well, they're just piling on and this is politically motivated. No, this is what happens when you say the dumb stuff out loud. Think about the Hemsley woman. With her, Leona Hemsley, saying, well, rich people don't pay taxes. Well, she went to jail because they started looking at her. But you're right. Had he not ducked his head up, no one would have ever thought twice.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I'm kind of thinking, and I think that, if you read Michael Cohen's book, which is a phenomenal book to read, but you read his book, they basically talk about this stuff going on and how, they are the ones that come together and made the decision, hey, maybe you should run. They started floating things out there. But let me tell you something. They ran for the presidency specifically because they saw dollar signs in it. And make no mistake about it, that's exactly what's happened. Donald Trump has made a fortune. His family has made a fortune from being, in the presidency. And that's an absolute fact. Whether it's all legal is another word.
Yeah.
But I mean, they made a lot of money. Ivanka and Jared made something like $400 and some, million while they were, serving the country.
Well, Jared got $2 billion from the Saudis. I mean, that's not nothing.
That's right. And I mean, at the end of the day, they have all benefit from this, and that's exactly what they wanted to do. They had no idea that it could come back and backfire on them.
Yeah.
They had no idea that when you find yourself in the highest seat in the land, there's also microscopes that are on you with everything that you do. And Donald Trump has proven to be nothing more than a wannabe dictator. I mean, he burned the bridges with our allies and created bridges with the likes of Putin and Kim Jong-un. And that's the way that he is. And he's exposed, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, remember the love letters? Remember the love letters with Un? Remember those? Remember those days?
Yeah, and the thing is those documents Donald Trump could have. He can frame those and hang them as well. But what he can't have is classified documents that are marked classified, secret, top secret, and even more.
Yeah.
So,
what's interesting though, Rich, is, we're now finding out, how he's mishandled all this stuff, empty folders, things strewn across the floor. My question goes to, I want to know what he did while he was president. If this is how he treated, classified documents when he wasn't allowed to have them, when he was in control of them, what did he do with them? Now, we've heard the stories that there were classified documents at the table of Mar-a-Lago during weddings and just strewn about. I want to know how he misused them while he was president. We should be looking into that as well.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And once again, remember, there's 43 empty folders. And, nobody knows what happened to the contents that were in those 43 empty folders. Donald Trump and them, they're the ones who gave the name for the new special master. And of course, they thought that since Donald Trump was the one that put him in position, that guy was going to basically roll, which is that's the reason why Donald Trump put any judge in office, was that one day that they could save him and defend him when he's, breaking the law.
Yeah, it was the backstop.
But what he failed to realize is that that's one of the great things about the justice system. It's either legal or it's not legal. There's really nothing in between. And nobody is willing to throw their reputation in the garbage over Donald Trump. That the judge in Florida that is the one that said, yep, I'm going to go ahead and allow for a special master. I mean, they have drug her through the garden because that's what she basically did, try to stand up for Donald Trump, when the truth is Donald Trump is wrong. And now the special master is saying, okay, now you have to prove me that you declassify these documents, and understand that as somebody who held the top secret security clearance, there are things that you have to do to declassify documents. There is no such thing as waving your hand over a swath of documents and saying they're all declassified. You can't do that. You cannot declassify documents that are the nuclear capabilities of some of our allies. You just can't do it.
Yeah,
well, that's exactly what he got caught with.
But in addition to waving the hand, they did throw some holy water on it, so that declassified it.
Yeah, well, I mean, good luck with that.
Oh, the fun. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with our good friend Rich Ojeda, national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind. You can check out their website, nodemleftbehind.com. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. Now, again, we're in this moment, and look, I don't have any fantasies or any delusions that Trump's going to be convicted of any crimes. He's not going to jail. This may cost him money. This may be fines. This may, preclude them from doing business. But ultimately, I've got people, he's going to go to jail. No, I don't think so. But for me, the bigger part of this, and the conversation I hope we eventually get to, is, well, rich people do this stuff all the time and get away with it. And our political folks have been getting away with it. And I want to see accountability across the board. I know the judge said we're all the same in the eyes of the law, but we're really not.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I'm telling you, I'm hoping that, and once again, this is a story that they're trying to use when we're talking about the 87,000 new IRS agents. 50,000 of the IRS agents that are coming on board are basically going to be filling the void of those 50,000 plus that are retiring at the same time they're coming on. And the other ones, really, the focus for them is to start looking at some of these people, the wealthy people in this country, and start checking them out. It's not going after the average Joe American out there that gets up and puts 40 hours a week in. This is going after these corporations and these top 1% folks to make sure that they're finally paying their fair share. Because now we know that they've been getting away with it, and that's just how it is. When you have that kind of money, you can hire the people who know the scams and know how to beat and cheat the system. And that's exactly what they did. Michael Cohen was part of that cheating of the system.
How come he wasn't named in all of this? Since he was part of the system, I know that Trump was, the kids were. Are you surprised that someone like Billy Barr comes out and saying that, well, they're dragging the children into this, like the children are 6 years old? You surprised by that?
Billy Barr is a bootlicking worm, is what he is. At the end of the day, Eric Trump, Don Jr., and Ivanka know exactly what they were doing. They've participated in this. They learned it from their father, who learned it from his father, because their entire bloodline is nothing but criminal. It's a crime syndicate is what it is. And at the end of the day, Michael Cohen, he went to jail. Michael Cohen rolled and told everything. That's the reason why you don't hear Michael Cohen's name in this. But when you're talking about the chief financial officer, Weiselberg, hey, he's still in it, and he's going to go down too. All of them are going to go down. Donald Trump will never spend time in prison. I don't think that's the same when it comes to Ivanka, Jared, and Don Jr. But I'm saying Donald Trump, it would be more of a hazard to put him in a prison and then have to worry about that prison now have to focus on making sure he don't get hit by nobody, because he'd be a target. So what I'm hoping is they stick his ass in a place, and what's left is what little they leave him with when they take everything from him. And he's there without the ability to have any social media or any voice, and we never hear from him again.
I had someone who said they should lock him in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. That would be the punishment.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want him to spend the rest of his life in a place like Mar-a-Lago where he gets to go out and golf. I want him to be placed in a place like an apartment someplace, and that's where he will spend the rest of his life. He doesn't have any more golf courses. He doesn't get to go anywhere. He stays there. He eats what they send him, and that's it. And he doesn't have social media anymore, because social media with Donald Trump is pure poison, and he proves that by still going to all these rallies and firing up the poorly educated, literally trying to weaponize them so that when they finally do make the decision to lock him down, he's going to call for an all-out war. And we should shut him down before he ever gets that capability.
So let me ask you this, kind of the last line of questioning, because you brought up the rallies. You see in the salute things they're doing, or the pointing to the sky that they're doing, and here in Pennsylvania, the Mastriano rally with the whatever that prayer was. Is this concerning to us on a certain level?
It is concerning, because here's the thing. Hitler preyed on the poorly educated, and that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now. And this whole QAnon stuff, I mean, Donald Trump is now posting pictures with him wearing a Q on his suit collar. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this. And those people that are giving their little salute, I mean, they're all poorly educated people who have been duped, because that's what you do when you're a criminal and you need a group of people to follow you. Donald Trump has convinced them that he's the second coming of Christ, and he's not.
I think Liz Cheney yesterday said a number of Republicans used to refer to him as Orange Jesus, which I found interesting, because I always called him like Marmalade Mussolini or Nectarine Nero, but Orange Jesus, that's okay.
But you have to understand that they know who he is. They know what he is. They're just using him to make money off of him, number one, and they're also using him to try to hold on to their power, because they know that they need the poorly educated to elect them. I mean, when you see Ted Cruz throwing stones at immigrants, knowing that he comes from immigrants, it ain't Ted, it's Raphael. I mean, he preys on the poorly educated, and he knows that he's got to stick with Trump as long as they can.
So last question. January 6th committee said they've come to an agreement with Jenny Thomas. You think she'll testify?
I mean, I don't know, what will she testify? What does she really bring to the table? Can they trust the things that she's going to say to them? I mean, I personally don't really care. I think that we know that she's absolutely nuttier than a you-know-what house rat. I mean, she actually has fallen for cults. She actually had to go through some program years ago to rearrange her mind because she had already fallen for cults in the first place. So she's susceptible to falling for cults. So I mean, I don't know what she's going to say, but she's garbage.
No, I think she could end up in jail. I think I'm with you.
I hope so.
There's no way Trump does. I'm right there with you. No. But Rich, as always, great stuff, my friend. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Brother, always a pleasure, man.
And good stuff. Our good friend Rich Ojeda. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at No Dem Left Behind. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So since Rich brought up Ted Cruz, I had to bring this up. Ted Cruz was all thrilled by the fact that some building projects were going on in his state. The expansion of I-27, a big thing he said the expansion of I-27 is estimated to create thousands of jobs and provide a direct link to local and international trade by reducing congestion. This is a great thing, and that, he led the way to fight for this funding. Only problem is he voted against the bill. He voted against it. And the good thing is the White House brought it up and said, hey, look, how do you justify that, Ted? How do you justify you're taking credit for something you voted against? It's, it is what it is. Let's go to the phone line. It's got Jim on line 1. Jim, how are you today?
Good, Rick. How are you?
Living the dream, my brother. What's on your mind?
Me too. I just have a quick comment about your last guest. I've heard him on before. I agree with what most he has to say. The one thing I disagree with, though, is what he constantly repeated a few times, that the Trump fans are uneducated. I would take issue with that. I have some family members that have master's degrees and whatnot, and a lot of my friends, those that are still around, have some advanced degrees also. So I think to say that these folks are undereducated, they might be undereducated in the ways of the world and being a little naive, or even worse. But as far as educated, I think he has a lot of folks on his side that are very well educated. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
I agree with you, Jim. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And I'll tell you, as he was saying that, I'm going, I don't know, because I know some pretty educated folks who are pretty stupid. But I guess that could be the frame, though. Some of the most educated people I know are, train wrecks in society. Like people who would say, hey, I voted, I fought for this funding. Ted Cruz is one of the brightest guys in Congress. Was Harvard Ivy League educated, one of the top debaters in the country. He was a master debater, so to speak. But to do this, he knows nobody's paying attention, and the scary part is nobody is. And this cult mentality is scary, especially when you're talking about, people who think about this on a religious level. And I point to Senator Langford from Oklahoma, who evidently, and this is, again, in past years, I hope people would have listened a little differently, but evidently he has made the comment that because of them overturning Roe, There was a major drought going on in Oklahoma, and they still have problems. He said that a week after it happened, they had a massive rain, and that people are now wondering if one's the other, and kind of this thinking, this kind of really ignorant thinking of, well, God was punishing us because of Roe, and now thanks, the heavens opened up and down came rain. And I'm going, well, if you wanted to take that kind of a view, wouldn't God, raining down with a massive storm, wouldn't that be seen as negative? Because if you're having a drought and you get a whole bunch of rain all at once, it basically just runs off. A week of steady, light rain, that would be kind of a blessing. But a deluge of rain just washing things away and causing damage, I don't know. But the fact that he even brought this up, a sitting U.S. senator using basically voodoo as a platform, kind of scary. Kind of scary. But look, at the end of this is who the Republican Party has been, and it's who they are. And sadly, we as voters, we're responsible. We vote for these people. And I look at Georgia, for instance. How is it? How in the good Lord's name is it possible that Herschel Walker is still in this race? And that there are some polls that actually have him winning? How is that possible? Maybe part of it is celebrity. I don't know. But this is a guy who can barely put a sentence together and has no policy chops whatsoever. But yet the most recent bit of polling out of Mammoth University has this a dead heat. And you go, how is that possible? And again, I blame us. This all comes back to us. Because we vote for these people. And I look at, someone like Rick Scott and his 11 or 12 point plan or whatever he's going to come up with next. And it's all about taking power away from the masses and handing it to the wealth class. I love the fact, and this is the part that I find brilliant, and which is the reason that, they're going to come out on Friday with a plan. It's kind of like the contract on America from the Gingrich era. But Kevin McCarthy in Pittsburgh, one of the red areas of Pittsburgh, of course, they're going to come out and they're going to roll out their the commitment to America or whatever they're calling it, because they've got to undo the damage done by Rick Scott, because he actually told the truth. Rick Scott wants to raise taxes on working people while cutting them on the rich people, because everyone should have a skin in the game. Half the people don't pay taxes in this country. Half the people don't pay any federal taxes. And I said, yeah, that's true. Half the people don't pay federal taxes. You know why? You know why they don't pay federal taxes? 2 reasons. 1, they work for such poverty wages, they don't make enough to pay federal taxes. Or 2, they're Donald Trump or Jeff Bezos or the very wealthy who can hire an army of tax attorneys to figure out how to avoid paying taxes. Or they just downright cheat. That's the world we're in. It's the working class of this country who pays the taxes. It's working people who are taxed enough. And I agree with my Tea Party friends. We're taxed enough already. We should be having the rich folk paying their fair share. My basic premise, you want to go back to the good old days, the glory days of this country? When people say, we're going to make America great again. I go, when were we great? They always point to the 50s and 60s. That's when we were great. You know why we were great? Smart government investment. High taxes on the very wealthy, high taxes on corporations. In fact, 92% top marginal tax rate on individuals, 56% tax rate on corporations, not the 15 that it is today. And we had strong unions. We had strong commitments to workers, and workers had strong commitments to each other. And we weren't pitted against each other. We weren't divided and conquered in the workplace. That's what we need to get back to. It's what we need to be fighting for on every front. And we need to be more inclusive and more diverse and equitable and all of that stuff and right some of the wrongs of the past. But that's the method forward. Together. At least my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you grab the podcast if you missed any portion of the program. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, And this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that members of the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 went out on strike against the Frontier Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. What they did not know was that the strike would last for more than 6 years, becoming one of the longest work actions in U.S. labor history. The Frontier was the second casino to open on the Vegas Strip in 1942. At the time of the strike, the Alardi family owned the historic casino. The Alardis were vehemently anti-union. They renovated the old facility and then reopened, refusing to sign a contract to pay its workers the same rate provided at most other Vegas casinos. Claiming that the Frontier was too small to match the wages of the larger outfits, management refused to budge from their position. In response, Local 226 members mobilized. The year before, Hattie Canty had been elected president of the local. She was a black mother of 10 children and a widow. She had worked as a hotel maid. Her leadership brought a new determination to the Culinary Workers Union. Local 226 set up 24-hour picket lines outside the Frontier. The strike was joined by Bartenders Local 165, Teamsters Local 995, the Operating Engineers Local 501, and the Carpenters Local 1780. The strike became an important moment in Vegas labor history, as other casino owners looked on watching the labor battle unfold. The unions stood strong. The picketers' demand that the owners should, quote, sell, shut down, or sign became the call. In the end, the Alardis decided to sell. The new ownership signed a union contract and rehired 280 striking workers. Triumphant union members cut a red ribbon at the hotel to mark their victory.
For many people, the animals they adopt and love become more like family members than pets. We have deep relationships with cats, dogs, parrots, goats, horses, and other fellow critters who at least pretend to love us back, providing comfort and joy all around. Sadly, though, life for all of us animals is a spin around the wheel of fortune, so illness and injuries happen. That's why one of the most valued members of every community are the staffers in our local veterinarian offices. Practically all vets, nurses, technicians, and support staff are there chiefly because they love animals and get personal satisfaction from providing care for them. When I say they are there, I not only mean 9 to 5, but this group of independent health providers are committed to being there when needed, including off hours and days off, for animal misfortune and suffering don't go by clocks and calendars. Local practitioners also try to be there for low-income people, offering deferred payment plans and even discounted fees so their animals can get the treatment they need. But wait, sound the ambulance sirens. Something is going horribly wrong. This venerable profession has recently been collapsing into a corporate model of Wall Street-owned chains. They are monopolizing markets, reducing staff, gutting service, and prioritizing the love of money over the love of animals. It's not uncommon these days for frantically worried customers to bring an ill or injured pet into their old reliable vet office, only to find it has quietly come under chain ownership, is understaffed, and is unwilling to accept the patient, forcing a desperate scramble to find emergency care, often out of town. This is Jim Hightower saying the same profiteering corporate mentality that has proven disastrous for human health care is now rapidly locking down pet care, and that's an act of animal cruelty.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday, about 1,200 Teamsters were in the streets of Seattle marching on Amazon, saying, hey, we want better wages, hours, conditions. We want dignity. We want respect. We demand. And it's about time. It's about time we see working people finally taking to the streets, and good on the new leadership there at the Teamsters for organizing this. And I hope we see much, much more of it. But here to share some thoughts on the organizing effort there at Amazon and, well, the organizing efforts across the country, I've asked our good friend John Logan to come talk with us. John is a professor at San Francisco State University. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, Rick. Glad to be on.
So, I'm looking at this rally and I'm going, well, it's about time. I'm We need to do much, much more of this stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as you said, I mean, I think Sean O'Brien, since he came in, to his credit, has breathed new life into the Teamsters. It seems that there's life in the movement, the union again. And, I think it's not a stretch to say that that's similar to all of this sort of organizing we see Starbucks and Trader Joe's and Chipotle. Chipotle, of course, is always also the one that organized in Lansing, Grand Rapids, not Lansing. Grand Rapids was with the Teamsters local. But, it sort of feels that there's life in the labor movement again. And, there's obviously a big disconnect between the sort of energy and enthusiasm we see in some parts of the labor movement, and then, the sort of national trends, which we know are still, pretty abysmal. But still, we're in a good situation. I mean, Sean O'Brien actually said it the other day, and I think, this, should be said all the time. We had a Gallup poll a couple of weeks ago that showed 71% public approval for unions, even higher, 80% basically amongst young workers. So, that's the highest it's been in since 1965. And back then, unions represented 30% of the workforce. So the 71% is even more remarkable given the organizational weakness of unions right now. But at a time when we have 71% approval, we need to have labor leaders being less timid.
No, I absolutely agree.
Now is the time. And I think Sean O'Brien recognizes that. I think some other labor leaders do too. But, if not now, then, when? What are they waiting for?
Yeah.
And this has been the best chance. I mean, we've talked about this many times. But, thanks to the organizing campaigns at Amazon, the organizing campaign at Starbucks, and all of those have helped to inspire, they've also put union issues, and particularly union busting, on the front page of the New York Times and the front page of the Washington Post, not just once or twice, but week after week after week. And so more people are paying attention to labor issues at this moment than has been the true for many decades. Yeah. So, you've got sky-high levels of public approval. You've got, media coverage that, the labor movement could never have dreamed of a couple of years ago. You've got people being engaged by the issues and understanding the issues for the, I think for the first time in many years. Because the thing about the media focus on Amazon and Starbucks, it really sort of injects a vividness and a concreteness into the fight over union representation that was always been lacking before. Labor movement talks about, strengthening the right to organize. And most people don't even know what they're talking about, So, but now, people are paying attention. More people understand the issues. And, people approve of unions and realize that working people have been hurt by union decline in this country. So it really, is the best time we've had for decades. And we don't know how long this moment will last.
That's the key.
But,
No, right there, John, is the key. We don't know how long this moment is lasting. And now's not the time to keep the powder dry, which is why I started today's program off talking about the Fed raising interest rates and aggressively, I think way too aggressively raising interest rates, because I think, the corporate boardrooms, the people in the ivory towers, I think they're paying attention to people wanting to organize and the approval rating of unions, and they want to get things back to the way it used to be, back to normal, right. Which is to make people desperate, to make them just happy to have a job. Which is why I believe they want a recession. They want to slam on the brakes of this economy to make people desperate again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. But, it is an opportunity. And, we don't get many good opportunities like this. We had congressional hearings a couple of days ago. We had Mark Pierce, former chair of the NLRB, and we had, Kate Bronsonbrenner, labor academic. But, the best witness by a mile was Michelle Eisen, one of the Starbucks organizers from Buffalo. And, again, if you want to know what really happens to workers when they try to exercise what is supposed to be a federally protected right, the type of bullying, the intimidation, the virtual terror that those workers were put through for several months leading up to those elections in Buffalo, get workers up in Congress. And by the way, they should have Howard Schultz up there and Jeff Bezos up there and get them to explain why they think that it's okay to break the law, not once or twice, but hundreds of times. They think the law doesn't apply to them. That even when they lose elections, like they did at Amazon and Staten Island, and have done 240 times now with Starbucks, what do? They say the NLRB is biased against them. They say the process is corrupt. And, we've heard that kind of line before, as people not accepting election results. And that, as and as you've pointed out many, many times, this is a process where everything is in the employer's favor. And yet, when they lose, when it is so clear that workers want a union, they say, no, that can't stand. The NLRB was corrupt. We're going to appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court. So, they don't respect democracy. They don't want workplace democracy. They're behaving in a way that's actually weakening the democratic institutions of the country, and they should be hauled before Congress and said and asked, why do you think that it's okay for you to break the law?
Yeah, no, and that's a tree, John. You're spot on. But Sean O'Brien said the other day that it's time to hold the white collar crime syndicate known as Amazon accountable. And I had some people say, "Well, that's a bit harsh. It's a bit harsh language." I'm going, "No, I don't think it's harsh enough. I think we need, as a working class of this country, to get much more militant and kind of get out of the malaise that we've had over the last 30 years."
Right, absolutely. And union leaders, not just Sean O'Brien, should be saying that over and over and over again. And Democrats, by the way, as we know, unions have some good allies in Congress. But, Democrats need to realize that it is in their self-interest to be talking about unions and talking about unlawful union busting on the part of Amazon and on the part of Starbucks, not once or twice, but all the time. I mean, they need to be repeating this over and over again so that those companies begin to feel some real pressure. Because, that's the only way anything will ever change.
No, I'm right there with you. And we need to be having votes every day on worker rights bills. And then granted, they may not pass, but we need to know which side people are on. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with John Logan, professor and director of labor and employment studies at San Francisco State University, talking about the march on Amazon by the Teamsters in Seattle yesterday. And the hope, John, that this continues. I want to see more of this stuff, not just on Amazon, but as you pointed out, Starbucks and Target and Home Depot and all of these big companies that for such a long time have been reaping massive wealth off the back of working people by cheating them out of wages, by taking health care, taking retirement security, things that in the past the working class of this country fought for, and it's been taken away from them over all these years.
Right. And people are on the side of unions. I mean, the polls show that, but they need to see unions taking action. They need to see unions standing up for working people, whether that be, marching on the streets of Seattle outside Amazon, testifying in Congress, protesting against Starbucks and Amazon's unlawful union busting. I mean, we've been complaining for years about all of the things that these firms are allowed to do legally to bust unions but should not be allowed to do. But now, we have these companies such as Amazon, such as Starbucks, they don't even pretend to comply with the law. They basically just said, we don't care what the law says. We don't care what the labor board says. We say they're wrong. We're going to appeal this and appeal it and appeal it. And we don't care, And so But yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. If union leaders were more assertive, aggressive, if we had more Sean O'Briens out there, more Sarah Nelsons, more Starbucks, or organizers, people would support them. Yeah, I mean,
No, it's the good fight. No, it's the good fight, John. And this is where I say, we're a divided country in this moment. We're divided politically.
Yeah.
For me, this is the way you bring people back together. And I say it all the time. People are tired of hearing about it. But on election night 2020, I was out leading a strike of 55 workers who were fighting the good fight, even though 3/4 of them that day voted for Donald Trump. In that moment, they were fighting the good fight, the righteous fight against corporate greed, and for a better tomorrow for themselves and their families. This, to me, is that opportunity, regardless of what hat you bought in the last election, to bring people back together.
Yeah, it is. And, unfortunately, it might be the only opportunity. And if we do squander this moment, we're not talking about weeks here, but as we said, we don't know how long it's going to last. And if the labor establishment, doesn't actually take this, with a sense of urgency, really mobilize behind these fights, because we all know that Amazon and Starbucks and Home Depot and Target and all of those companies, it's going to take the entire labor movement supporting organizing campaigns at those companies. But as I said, now is the time. I mean, young workers are really energized. They want to see leadership. They want opportunities to take leadership. And, they want to see more sort of bold, and brave. They want to see real national leadership.
Yeah, they want to fight her.
So
let me ask you this, John, because we look at President Biden, and I say all the time he's the most pro-union president of my lifetime. Yeah. Some say probably ever. And look, I love the rhetoric. I love the fact that he's willing to stand out there and say, the unions built the middle class, and I think that's great. We need it. But policy-wise, I'm not seeing the Democratic Party, who is supposed to be the party of working people, I'm not seeing them deliver policies that's going to move us there. Even if you're losing the fight, you got to have it. You got to bring this stuff up, because I make the premise all the time: Republicans hate working people. Show us how much they hate working people by putting up votes.
No, I agree. And like you said, there should be votes and bills all the time. Let's have a bill to rein in Starbucks union busting. Let's have a bill. Let's call it the Amazon Anti-Bullying Act, or whatever we want to call it. If the shoe were on the other foot, if the Republicans had an issue like this, you can bet that they would have it front and center. They would never let it go. They would, never let it be out of the headlines. And as I said, normally the problem is that this crisis is a hidden crisis. Amazon and Starbucks and the incredible media and social media that they have generated have helped to make it visible. People are paying attention and people are on the side of unions. And, we really just need to make sure we don't look back on this period and think, if only we had done more.
Yeah, another missed opportunity. You look back to the Carter years, a missed opportunity to undo Taft-Hartley. You look to the Obama years. You look to the Clinton years. There was a strike replacement bill. The only reason I voted for Bill Clinton back in '92 is he was going to push for and pass a strike replacement bill. And Bob Dole was the one guy who filibustered it, and they never came back to it.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But when you think about back to Obama. So why did the Employee Free Choice Act not stand a chance? I mean, basically three things. It was a quiescent period. There was nothing equivalent to the Amazon labor union, to Starbucks Workers United, to the Teamsters and other unions, saying we're going to take on Amazon. Second, no one was paying attention to the issues. As I said, these campaigns have put the issues in the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, on every media outlet in the country wants to write about unions right now. People are paying attention. And third, Obama didn't lift a finger to help. It didn't even merit a mention in his memoir on his years in the White House. But when you had the first two things, nothing going on, quiescent period, and second, no one paying attention, it was almost inevitable that he wouldn't, expend any political capital on it. But now, at this moment, conditions are different. There is actually a real opportunity. And, momentum can change very quickly in these things. It's difficult to draw direct historical parallels, but I'll tell you, it is absolutely true. If anyone reads the history, in 1934, they thought the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act, didn't have a hope in hell. There was no way that thing, had been voted on and defeated. A year later, it sailed through the Congress.
Yep. You got to make it your center.
Yeah. And, people were taking action, just like workers are today. We need to see more of it. We need to see, Teamsters and everyone else, taking to the streets to support labor rights. And, the fight against the corporate bullies as well. There's barely, as you said, it's not even a partisan issue. There are Republicans, Trump supporters, who are very worried about the monopoly power of these companies, and think that they need to be reined in.
Yep.
People know that it's not healthy, for democracy, for anything else, to have, companies that are more powerful than many countries. And, so they will support working people standing up against the Amazons and the Starbucks and the Home Depots. I'm quite sure.
Yep, because it's the right fight.
Majority of Americans will.
It is the right fight. It's the righteous fight, John. You're absolutely right.
And it's the right time as well, Rick.
There you go. Yeah. John, I appreciate the time, man. As always, great stuff. I'm looking forward to the future. I'm hoping good things. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Bye.
Thanks so much, our good friend John. John Logan, professor and director of labor employment studies there at San Francisco State University. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day that labor activist Mother Jones led a march of miners' children through the streets of Charleston, West Virginia. Her aim was to illustrate the effects of poverty. In the speech she gave that day, Mother Jones declared, "Tyranny, robbery, and oppression of the people must go. The children must be educated." Her march took place during the 1912 to 1913 Paint Creek, Cabin Creek coal miners' strike in that state. During the strike, gunfire was exchanged between members of the United Mine Workers and the mine owners' hired private army. The governor declared martial law on 3 separate occasions. Mother Jones was arrested in February of 1913. She was accused of conspiring to commit murder and brought before a military court. She refused to recognize the legitimacy of her court-martial. Mother Jones was sentenced to 20 years in the state penitentiary. While she was under house arrest for 85 days, Mother Jones contracted a dangerous case of pneumonia. She was 76 years old. Her support of the miners and subsequent trial helped build the reputation of Mother Jones as a tough union activist and the miners' angel. It also helped lead the U.S. Senate to launch an investigation into conditions in the West Virginia coal mines. When Henry D. Hatfield was elected governor of West Virginia, he was determined to end the labor crisis. He released those who had been convicted under the military court. On May 8th, Mother Jones was set free. Mother Jones, the grandmother of all agitators, continued her fight for working people. Mother Jones's trial helped to spotlight the low wages coal miners earned, the long hours they worked, and the dangerous working conditions under which they toiled. One of her most remembered quotes is, "Pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living." Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. You got any questions, comments, thoughts, something in your mind? Email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, at Rick Smith Show. You can shoot a direct message at us, tweet, all of that stuff. Also, Facebook. We do some over there, not as much. So it is what it is. But here's the thing. This is a moment. The important part of this moment is people are looking at unions and going, maybe this is the answer. And I've been saying this for, well, every minute of the 17 years I've been doing this program, because I truly believe that if we can recreate that thing that our grandparents' generation built, that kind of an economy that was meant for everybody, not just the people sitting up in the ivory towers, but for the working people. And even have business leaders who, like Henry Ford gets credit for saying, hey, our workers should be able to buy our cars. Now, granted, that was in his radical self-interest, one of the most anti-union people to ever walk this planet, and for all intent and purposes, not a good guy either. But at least from the business perspective, understood you got to share the wealth, because if you want people buying your stuff, they got to have the money. That all came to head in the 50s and 60s, where you had smart policies that encouraged people to join and form unions and made sure companies bargained. Democrats have got to pick up that mantle with people looking at unions and going, yeah, we want that again. 71% of people in this country, to get 71% of the people in this country to agree on anything is mind-blowing. 80% of young people see this is the way forward. So Democrats, if you're listening, hello, this is the message every day. Every time you speak to somebody, oh, hey, by the way, join a union. Oh, hey, by the way, we need collective bargaining rights strengthened in state after state. Because you know what Republicans do masterfully? They stay on message. They stick to it. And then when they get power, oh my goodness, they can't wait to use it. Look at Kentucky. Kentucky, as quick as they could, first day, 9 a.m., they went and they passed the No Rights at Work bill. Pennsylvania, if Doug Mastriano, heaven forbid he wins, if he wins, day one, right to work is going to be what they go after first, because that's the priority, crushing workers and their rights. Virginia, same thing. God, all of these states did this stuff when Scott Walker in Wisconsin. This is what they did, take labor rights away. Democrats, you're not doing that. When Democrats took control of both houses in the governor's mansion in Virginia, you didn't see them going, hey, we're going to undo this horrible. No, we can't. That'd be divisive. This is where Democrats have got to grab this issue by the you-know-what, and this is where Democrats have got to be the ones who stand up and fight. Now, he brought up Obama and the Employee Free Choice Act. I met President Obama twice when he was candidate Obama. Shook his hand twice, asked him about the Employee Free Choice Act. He looked me in the eye and told me, we're going to get something better. Got nothing. Because there wasn't any political capital put behind it. And there shouldn't have had to have been. It should have been a matter of course. It should have been, yeah, of course we're going to pass this. Of course we're going to strengthen collective bargaining rights. Of course we're going to streamline the process to get people to be able to pursue their rights without tons of harassment from the employer. Of course we're going to do that. But they don't. So Democrats, if you're listening, the working class is looking for a champion. And sadly, they're looking to people like Donald Trump, and they're looking to crackpots like Mastriano and Oz. Be the champion of working people that you want to be. Be the champion of working people that we need you to be. And push forth positive change. Be that fighter. Be that party that is the party of the working class, and the votes will come. This is one of those moments. And then all of those side issues will go away. I've said a million times, the whole same-sex marriage thing, the whole transgender thing in the workplace was dealt with years ago. And we wouldn't have to have Joe Biden come out on every individual case and make a statement, because no, institutionally, we're moving in the right direction, the direction of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. But will my Democrat friends listen? I don't know. We'll see. And we're going to find out as we embark on our working class hero road trip, kicking off on September 30th, coming to an area near you in the next several days. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. By all means, if you miss any portion of the show, podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Again, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.